Hi. How are y'all doing? So I get to go after Laura Sommer and before Craig Silverman. I'm like the lousy ham in between two really fantastic pieces of bread. So my name is Alexios. I'm here to talk to you about fact-checking in 2017. And if you're thinking, wow, he really half-assed his job coming up with a title for this session, you may be partly right. But I want to talk about fact-checking in 2017 because I think we are in a specific place. We are in a place and a moment where we do need to take stock, where we do need to realize what has worked, what has not worked, and that we are in that moment because 2016 happened. And I don't need to explain to a room as well-informed in the trends of journalism as this is what happened in 2017. But I do want to make sure that we spend the rest of this panel and our conversations about fact-checking dealing with it in a nuanced manner. And this has not been something that I've seen in commentary of the role of facts and fact-checking in journalism. Two things can be true. Post-truth can be a bullshit term. It can mean nothing, and we can look at why I think that in a moment. But fact-checkers can also face great challenges, right? We can have both those things being true at the same time. And we need to have both those things being true at the same time in order to actually make fact-checking a little bit better. And I'm not going to spend time on this because I'm going to get shouted at my time limits, but hopefully we'll talk about it, what happened in 2016 in the Q&A afterwards. But so both these things are verdaderos, but so we would ideally have a really scrupulous analysis and attentive research of what happens in fact-checking, which headlines work, which do not, do they matter, do readers care, are they reached? But what we're getting most of the time instead is this kind of meme, this lol, nothing matters anymore, this OMG, facts are dead, which is fine in the settings of a comedy show, but is not what we should be getting in media analysis, in trainings, in think pieces about the role of fact-checking in journalism. And if you are like me and read headlines, you'll have seen, and hopefully the articles too, you'll have seen this all over the place, right? Not just in America, everywhere. This sort of, we have entered the post-fact era. And I'm calling bullshit on that. I'm calling bullshit on it because of two studies. I'm a fact-checker, so I bring my sources. The first study, I would bet most of you in this room know or have heard the term backfire effect. This is a concept that was found in 2006 by some researchers who seemed to suggest that when you correct people, not only do they not change their minds, they actually retract into the false belief even more. They more doggedly believe that. And so this has informed our understanding of fact-checking for the decades since, and you can still find it in editorials. What you don't find in editorials was that just last year, two researchers tried to replicate the study and failed across the board. They took 36 different topics. They asked 8,100 participants, do you believe this? They fact-checked them, and then they asked them again, do you believe this? And lo and behold, the curve went down. We went from a state of greater misinformation to a state of greater information. Fact-checking works. And what happened this year was that study was sort of corroborated by another study, and I would draw your attention to the bottom right of this graph, the dotted lines in the Trump column. So specifically related to Trump. And journalists obsess too much about Trump, but for fact-checking, he is an important case study, right? He butchered facts throughout 2016. So the researchers presented voters with 4 pieces of misinformation peddled by the Trump campaign. And, the red dotted line are Trump supporters. They were asked, hey, how much do you believe this? And they gave a certain score, 5 or 6. Then they asked non-Trump supporting Republicans how much you believed it. The score was a little lower. And then they asked Democrats, the blue dotted line, and that was even lower. So far, so conventional wisdom. What happened next may surprise you, as some of those clickbaity headlines promise. Whether they were corrected immediately or whether they were corrected 1 week later, everyone's belief score went down after being told that the claim was false. If it was a Democrat, if it was a Republican, if it was a Trump-supporting Republican. fact-checking changes minds. When you read that the Trump voters just don't care about facts, that is an angsty liberal commentator's take. It is their sloppy way to explain away a political phenomenon by saying those people just don't get facts if they bit them in their ass. And that's not true. And so, I want to close my presentation. If you meet a fact checker who tells you all is well in the realm of fact checking, run for the hills, preferably the hills that Gardner was saying before. Don't trust them. There's a lot that should change. There's a lot that needs to be done in fact checking. I see 3 rising challenges. The first is that around the world in a lot of countries, fact checkers are perceived to be part of the same media ecosystem that failed to be truthful to date. Right? Whether they are within legacy media outlets or whether just for the fact that they've been around so long. And so one thing that we at the International Fact-Checking Network try to do is we have a code of principles. Yes, code of principles are not new, but we actually ask signatories to subject themselves to external vetting processes that will see whether indeed their methodology is public, whether indeed they have a corrections policy, whether their funding and organizational status is clear, whether they link to all their sources. The second challenge is that, and this is, we would need more research on this, but it seems like the very sources of facts, so fact checkers never tell readers, trust us. They sort of pass it up to the primary sources of facts that they collect in their articles. If those sources of facts, if academia, research, science are also under attack, then we're in trouble. Then the whole edifice risks crumbling down. And so what I think fact checkers will be able to do or have to do is sort of take the next big leap forward in terms of transparency of sourcing. 10 years ago, we were the first ones who would be hyperlinking to every single source. That was new. Now that is no longer new. Fake news sites link to their fake news sources. So we need to think, and we're working on ways in which you can annotate primary sources, provide additional information, context, caveats, what their biases may be, what you do and don't know about them that can sort of obviate this issue. And finally, the great Craig will talk about this in greater detail, I think that fact checkers are under and ill-equipped to counter misinformation at the scale and in the formats that it presents itself right now. And I won't touch on it, we'll talk about it later, but I think obviously partners of the network have been working with Facebook. That has had mixed results. There are also all kinds of solutions like trying to target stuff that does well that has high engagements through BuzzSumo. I think part of it is what Laura was mentioning before, is to stop thinking of a fact-checking site as a place where you come to find out the truth or the verdict for a single specific claim, but where you come to learn how to do it yourself. And I was heartened at our inaugural International Fact-Checking Day. We had a high school lesson plan for high school teachers to teach fact-checking, and that reached more than 100,000 students around the world. So if you take nothing else from this short chat, it is that you should think that facts matter, that we should not waste our time with trendy, philosophical, para-philosophical future of news buzzwords, but that we should get in the trenches, get our hands dirty. How do we make fact-checking matter? How do we make fact-checking better? Because across the world, even basic facts of what share of the population is immigrant or of a different religion, or in the UK before the Brexit referendum, do you know that you directly elect European parliamentarians? People don't know basic facts about our societies and our democracy. That is a problem. We need fact-checking more than ever. Thank you very much.